stages when they're starting up. So I'm looking forward to having that opportunity to play a role in turning Ohio's economy around.
Back to elections for a second. Got a question. The audience wants to know, somebody does, which Democrat you're supporting in the governor's race and why?
I have not taken a position on who I am supporting in the governor's race. I am confident that we will have a strong candidate at the top of the ticket, and along with U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown and the other down ballot candidates, I look forward to running a hard campaign around the state, and I think voters are ready for a change.
Got a few more questions here. I want to put out a last call for anybody who might have come up with one more question they want to get into the mix. Presumably, this is a friendly audience. Do you get a chance to speak to less friendly venues, and what kind of response do you get that says to the facts?
Well, as I said in my remarks, I represented Portage County for 4 terms in the legislature. I've knocked on thousands of doors. I've held town hall meetings. I've held regular office hours in my district. And as I said, my House district in the same election supported Donald Trump. He won the district by 5 points. I won it by 10 points. So clearly, the voters that I represent in a swing area, including Republicans and including independents, feel that I have done a good job representing them in the State House. The work that we do is not always so partisan. It's not always about, are you a Republican, are you a Democrat? I help everyone in my district. That's an important role of an elected leader. And I speak to a lot of those audiences by the nature of the district I've represented now for 8 years.
Speaking of the president, how much of a factor do you think Trump will be in the coming midterms?
I will say I'm not sure about the answer to that question. I know that my opponent in this race has welcomed President Trump to campaign for him, and I'm not sure whether that is a positive. I look at the issues involved in this race, and seeing President Trump come out and say millions of people tried to vote illegally, start a commission to look into this illegal voting. When it comes to this important race, that's not the conversation that we ought to be having. So I hope that that type of rhetoric doesn't continue. I hope my opponent isn't bolstered by that type of rhetoric. And, we're going to have to see what role his presidency plays. I will say that typically when one party takes back the White House, usually there's a wave in the other direction for the opposite party, checking the power of the presidency. So we'll see if that happens in this election. I know that there is certainly a lot of momentum on the Democratic side, a lot of energy, and I hope we can translate that into the victory Ohio needs in November of 2018.
I think we have time for a couple more questions. Why have so many precincts been moved and consolidated into multi-precinct polling places, particularly in urban areas?
So this has been done because of the amount of people who are choosing to vote early. So there are less people voting on election day, but I think there are problems out there that I hear about of people having confusion about where to vote and votes getting thrown out because people are directed to the wrong location that we certainly need to address in the state. I think also that people are having to travel further in order to cast their vote. They always went to the church down the street, now they have to go to the American Legion Hall across town. So we need to, make sure that we're able to accommodate an easy and smooth process on election day and look at where we have made those changes and make sure that they're taking into account all of our Ohio voters and their access to the polls on election day. We also need to make sure our polls are accessible under the Americans with Disabilities Act, finding locations that voters can park and get in and out of easily. These are all important considerations as we're thinking about how to set up polling places on election day. And I don't think the answer is having fewer poll workers to deal with some of this confusion and some of these problems that are coming up with these consolidations. And I'll say that right now is a priority for the majority party in the legislature right now. And that's something that I've been working to fight against.
I think this might be the last question. Do you have a position on any reforms for the Electoral College?
I know that in the legislature there have been proposals circulating to take a position of abolishing the Electoral College system. And there are states that handle the way they distribute their votes in a different, not a winner-takes-all system. I certainly would be open to talking to what Ohio voters think about that issue. I know that to have a few elections now where the winner of the popular vote isn't the president, it's the winner of the Electoral College, is incredibly frustrating. And I think that it frustrates voters and makes them fear or worry that their vote isn't being taken seriously, that their vote doesn't matter. And I think we need to look at ways that we can improve that situation, and looking at the Electoral College is certainly, I think, a way that we can help energize voters and help make sure the will of the people is reflected in who's sitting in our White House.
Please join me in thanking Kathleen Clyde.